Nearly every item in your shopping cart carries a hidden story you have probably never stopped to read. That quiet narrative is costing your household far more than you suspect. Most of these products you have purchased hundreds of times and almost never bothered to examine the sticker. That is precisely why they deserve your full attention right now. If each product climbs by only a few dollars or silently shrinks what it delivers inside the wrapper, an average family could bleed hundreds of extra dollars annually. Not because you're consuming more, but because the adjustments happen so gradually that nearly all of us fail to register them. A shorter roll, a lighter carton, a slimmer bottle, or a fresh price that slowly begins to feel routine. And those daily staples are often the ones that make the biggest dent in a household grocery budget. Because sometimes the deepest savings do not come from the priciest purchase, but from the item you keep dropping into your cart without ever glancing at the cost. 12. Toilet paper. There is one product in the home that nobody thinks about until there is exactly a single roll remaining. Nobody marches into a warehouse club excited to hunt for it. It just sits quietly at the bottom of the trolley alongside the detergent and garbage sacks, then appears on the bill without most shoppers remembering the dollar figure they just handed over. That is exactly why it can drain our wallets the most. Before the pandemic, many popular 24-roll bundles usually ranged around $14 to $16. By the peak period of 2022 to 2023, many retailers were charging $22 to $26. If $48 once bought about 3 bundles, then during that high price window, the same amount sometimes only delivered 2 bundles. You are not purchasing more. You are simply receiving less for the identical money. Yet climbing prices represent only half the picture. Many individuals have held 2 packages that looked nearly the same size without noticing that the sheet count, roll length, or expense per 100 sheets had shifted. The wrapper screams mega roll in bigger, bolder type, but the most crucial detail hides in the tiny print beneath. That is shrinkflation. The sensation that everything remains unchanged while the genuine value quietly erodes. Toilet paper is not costly because it is scarce. It is costly because almost everything behind it demands more money. Wood pulp energy factories, freight, and warehouse storage. It is even one of the most expensive items to transport because trucks must haul enormous amounts of air rolled into bulky packs. A friend of mine once mentioned that he could recall the exact price of a pound of ground beef, but he could not remember what he paid the last time he grabbed toilet paper. And that is precisely how inflation operates with the most familiar daily items. It does not stun you in a single shopping run, it just silently appears on this month's receipt, then tacks on a bit more the following month. If each pack rises by just a couple of dollars, it sounds trivial, but when you add paper towels, trash liners, laundry soap, toothpaste, and dozens of other necessities, those tiny increases can balloon into dozens of extra dollars yearly. So if you spot a reasonable price before July 1st, consider grabbing an extra 24-roll or 30-roll pack, not to panic purchase, but to shop while you still possess a choice. Check the cost per roll or per square foot and stash it in a dry location. A bundle of toilet paper can sit in a closet for months with virtually zero quality loss. Does your household usually buy toilet paper in advance? Or do you wait until only a few rolls remain before dashing to the shop? Share your answer in the comments. Because sometimes the way we purchase a simple pack of toilet paper mirrors how each family handles inflation every single day. And if toilet paper is something you only ponder when you are nearly out, the next item is even a touch more troubling because it vanishes right before your eyes, one sheet at a time. 11. Aluminum foil. On certain evenings in an American kitchen, the thing that rescues the whole meal is not a pricey gadget. Sometimes it is merely a sheet of aluminum foil. A tray of roasted chicken needs covering so it does not dry out. A few potatoes need to stay warm for another 20 minutes because the kids or grandkids have not arrived home yet. A leftover portion of lasagna needs wrapping for lunch the following day. Aluminum foil does not instantly make food taste superior, but it helps stop a meal from being ruined at the very last moment. That is what makes this product distinct. Aluminum foil is not simply a kitchen supply. It is a tool for trapping heat and locking in moisture. It helps cut down on pan scrubbing and rescues food that might otherwise get tossed. For families that cook in larger batches, a roll of aluminum foil becomes part of meal planning. But across the past few years, that small product is no longer as cheap as it once was. Many 75 to 100 square foot rolls used to sit around $3 to $5. Today, heavy-duty or non-stick versions can run roughly $6 to $9. On some store shelves, a familiar $4 item has morphed into an $8 item. The reason traces back to aluminum. Aluminum demands enormous amounts of electricity to smelt and roll thin. When energy, shipping, and packaging costs climb, aluminum foil gets tugged up fairly rapidly. But when you buy it, do not merely look at the sticker on the box. Examine the number of square feet. A $6 roll can be pricier than an $8 roll if it is substantially shorter. Words like heavy-duty or non-stick ring pleasant, but cost per square foot is the number you can trust. I realized this one weekend while grilling. The tray of roasted vegetables had just emerged from the oven. The chicken was still hot, and I tugged out the aluminum foil to wrap the leftovers. The roll ran out much faster than anticipated. I glanced back at the box, and the lettering stayed big while the total square footage was smaller. I was not using more. I was simply purchasing less while thinking I was receiving the identical amount. If your household regularly grills or saves leftovers, consider picking up 1 or 2 spare rolls when the price is favorable. Choose the correct type for the task. Standard for light wrapping and heavy duty for roasting and freezer storage. Store it in a dry spot and keep it distant from the sink so the carton stays sturdy and the cutting edge does not get damaged. A roll of aluminum foil is rarely remembered when you buy it, but it is nearly always the first thing you reach for to salvage a meal. Paper towels vanish faster than almost anything else in the kitchen. They sit by the sink or near the stove, ready for quick use. 1 sheet to dry your hands, 1 to soak up bacon drippings, 2 to wipe spilled sauce. A few more to wrap freshly washed vegetables and an extra because your hands are damp and the roll is right there. That is why paper towels cost more than most folks grasp. Nobody uses them like a luxury product. We use them almost without thinking. A 6-roll pack from well-known brands often sits around $7 to $9 depending on promotion. When paper packaging and freight costs rose, many packs climbed to $12 to $16. Some households paid nearly twice as much for the identical daily habit of tearing off paper towels. The problem begins with pulp, then drags in electricity, water, heat, cores, wrapping, warehousing, and transportation. Paper towels are bulky and gobble up plenty of shelf and truck space. When logistics costs swell, their price is easy to nudge higher. One more detail worth scrutinizing is the packaging claiming mega roll or triple size. If you neglect to check sheets or total square footage, it is easy to be tricked by the feeling that it is bigger. I noticed this during a summer barbecue with kids, burgers, sauce, and spilled iced tea. Just a few hours later, a nearly new roll felt substantially lighter. Nobody felt like they were spending cash. Everyone was just savoring a perfectly normal weekend afternoon. If your household regularly cooks, has grandchildren, pets, or hosts barbecues, buy before July 1st when you find a solid price. Do not just look at the number of rolls. Compare cost per 100 sheets or per square foot. Large packs often deliver a superior deal if you have room to store them in a dry place. Paper towels do not disappear because of one moment of overuse. I pulled out the plastic wrap after dinner and the new roll felt lighter than the old one. Same box, same colors, same easy tear label, but the square footage dropped from 300 to 225. The price went from $5 to $8, and I didn't even notice until I checked the cost per square foot. It's not just plastic. It's petroleum, natural gas, the cardboard box, the truck, and the meal it keeps from going bad. Now, when I see a good price, I grab 2 long rolls and check the cost per foot, not just the shelf tag. They help you control portions, cut down waste, and seize sales without worrying that the food will spoil before you can use everything. But no matter how diligently you save, every kitchen still has something that must be discarded. And that is when an item nobody enjoys buying turns more important than you imagine. Does your household usually use the right size trash bag, or do you just grab a large sack for everything? 7. Trash bags. If someone had told me a year ago that trash bags would become one of the most critical items to monitor at the grocery store, I absolutely would have chuckled. But then I started paying attention. Trash bags are something nobody wants to purchase, nobody flaunts, and almost nobody brings up when discussing rising costs. But once you run dry at the wrong moment, the entire house instantly becomes uncomfortable. A weekend barbecue leaves behind paper plates, corn husks, paper towels smeared with sauce, and meat packaging. One garage purge can spawn 3 full sacks. A refrigerator that loses power for a few hours can be sufficient to force a family to discard spoiled food. At that juncture, trash bags are no longer a side thought. They are what keep the home from sliding into disorder. In the past few years, many cartons of large trash bags have gone from around $12 to $15 up to $18 to $22, depending on the brand and material. Contractor or heavy-duty versions can cost even more. The reason stems from plastic, petroleum, shipping, packaging, and manufacturing costs. But what startles many people is that the number of bags inside the carton can also shift. The carton still appears nearly the same, but it may slide from 90 bags down to 80 or 75. If you do not examine the price per bag, it is extremely easy to believe you are still buying the identical familiar product. A father in my neighborhood follows one remarkably simple rule. Do not deploy a large sack for small rubbish. Dry waste in the home office receives a small bag. Kitchen scraps get the large sack. Yard clearing, leaves, or heavy debris get the contractor grade. It sounds unremarkable, but that habit helps one box of trash bags endure several weeks longer. That is the most practical money-saving tactic. Pick the correct size, the correct thickness, and compare the cost per bag instead of solely staring at words like flex, strong, or extra large. A sack that is too thin can rip and force you to use two. A sack that is too thick for light trash is simply wasteful. Trash bags are something you never praise when you have plenty, but you recall instantly when the last one vanishes. 6. Laundry detergent. How much laundry does a household genuinely wash in a week? If there are only 2 people, it may be 3 or 4 loads, but add 2 youngsters, a stack of bath towels, weekend bed linens, sports uniforms, and the blanket from the family dog, and that figure can effortlessly climb to 6 or 8 loads. The washing machine is not as noisy as a lawnmower or a vacuum cleaner. It just quietly hums week after week. And along with it, the jug of laundry detergent quietly empties too. Many jugs of laundry detergent for roughly 100 loads used to cost $10 to $12 on promotion. Today, many comparable products have risen to around $15 to $20, especially concentrated or large-size versions. Yet what shocks many people is that they do not actually receive the full 100 loads printed on the package. A neighbor of mine always filled the cap because he believed more soap meant cleaner garments. After switching to the proper line on the cap, the identical bottle of detergent lasted nearly another month, and the clothes were still just as spotless. That is why you should examine the price per load instead of the size of the jug. The more laundry a household tackles, the quicker a difference of a few pennies per load can morph into dozens of dollars over a year. If your home has small children, pets, or frequent loads of towels and sheets, purchase the large jug when you spot a promotion and measure the correct amount. Not to squeeze every drop of soap, but so that every time you press the washing machine button, it does not silently snatch more money than needed. Laundry detergent is not pricey because of one purchase. It is pricey because the washing machine in your home can spin hundreds of times a year. How many loads of laundry does your household tackle each week? 5. Dish soap. There is one notably interesting detail in many American kitchens. The bottle of dish soap parked beside the sink may have resided there for years. The only element that changes is the liquid inside. More and more families are not purchasing a fresh bottle every time. They simply buy a refill pouch and replenish the old bottle again. The reason is not driven by a green living craze. It is because the arithmetic is exceptionally straightforward. A small 18 to 24 ounce bottle often costs around $3 to $5. Meanwhile, a refill pouch or large 70 to 90 ounce jug typically costs only a few dollars extra but contains several times more dish soap. When computed per ounce, the refill option is frequently markedly cheaper. I once stood behind an older couple at a discount store. The husband was clutching the familiar small bottle while the wife smiled and pointed to the refill pouch on the lower shelf. Inside it is all dish soap. We are paying for the bottle all over again. In the end, they purchased the refill pouch. The old bottle remained beside the sink like every day while the large pouch was stashed under the kitchen cabinet to refill it when necessary. That is an extremely minor adjustment, but one that repeats dozens of times across the years. If your household cooks every day or regularly hosts guests, try examining the price per ounce instead of the sticker on the label. One large refill pouch can help save both money and the quantity of plastic bottles tossed during the year. Sometimes the smartest call in the supermarket is not swapping to a new brand. It is simply keeping the old bottle and filling it one more time. Do you still use bar soap at home, or have you entirely switched to body wash? Bar soap. There are certain items in the home that our grandparents almost never let run dry. Not because they were lavish, but because they were uncomplicated, long-lasting, and genuinely useful. Bar soap is one of them. Before body wash arrived in dozens of fragrances, before plastic bottles became a familiar bathroom staple, many families only required a few bars of soap in the cupboard. One bar for washing hands, one bar in the bathroom, several more bars stored dry in a drawer used gradually across many months. That is not an outdated custom. That is a remarkably pragmatic kind of saving. A common 6 to 8 bar pack of soap typically used to run around $4 to $6. Today, many comparable packs have climbed to roughly $7 to $10, especially sensitive skin types or long-established brands. But weighed against many bottles of body wash, bar soap still holds one advantage. You are not paying for excessive water, plastic containers, and package design. The reason for the price increase is not solely the brand. Bar soap depends on vegetable oils, animal fats, glycerin, fragrance, paper wrapping, factory energy, and transportation. When the costs of palm oil, coconut oil, cleaning compounds, paper boxes, and operating expenses rise, a modest item like bar soap does not get spared. It simply rises more slowly and more silently, so fewer individuals detect it. I once opened my mother's bathroom drawer and spotted a few bars of soap still neatly arranged in their old paper wrappings. Nothing fancy, no costly scent, no luxury label. Yet when needed, it was always there. One small bar can endure for weeks if it is kept dry properly. For a large household, a few packs bought at the right price can replace quite a few bottles of body wash during the year. The most vital tip is never to let soap sit in water. Employ a draining soap dish, store unused bars in a dry spot, and purchase in packs when you locate a solid price. The drier the soap stays between uses, the longer it survives. It sounds elementary, but that is the difference between a bar that lasts 2 weeks and one that endures almost a month. Bar soap is not outdated at all. It just does not need loud advertising to demonstrate its worth. And occasionally, the thing our grandparents consistently bought is precisely the item most worth purchasing again when everything else is getting more expensive. 3. Toothpaste. No one regards a tube of toothpaste as a major expense. It is compact, lightweight, and usually only a few dollars. Yet the entire household uses it every single day. One individual brushing twice daily totals more than 700 times a year. A household of 4 reaches nearly 3,000 times. When you view it that way, toothpaste is no longer a tiny item. It is a ritual repeated all year long, so relentlessly that almost no one checks the price. Many well-known tubes of toothpaste used to cost only around $2 to $3 on promotion. Today, it is not hard to spot many familiar varieties at $4 to $6, especially whitening, enamel repair, or sensitivity formulas. A tube climbing by $1 or $2 does not stun anyone. But if the entire household uses it all year, that increase begins to register. What merits attention is that very few people stand in the supermarket comparing toothpaste prices. They simply snatch the familiar type, drop it into the cart, and keep moving. That is exactly why the new price can so effortlessly start to feel normal. I once stood before the toothpaste shelf and observed that nearly every box promised something. Whiter teeth, stronger enamel, gentler care, longer-lasting fresh breath. At a glance, they seemed identical. But when I peered closer, one tube held only 4 ounces, while another contained 5.1 or 6 ounces. One type was cheaper on the price sticker, but more expensive when calculated per ounce. That is the sort of difference you only catch if you pause for 10 extra seconds. The reason for the price climb is also remarkably evident. Toothpaste is not merely paste in a tube. It is fluoride, mild abrasives, foaming agents, mint flavor, thickeners, multi-layer plastic tubes, paper boxes, printing ink, and shipping. When the costs of chemicals, plastic, packaging, and logistics rise, the small tube in the bathroom gets pulled along too. If you notice the type your household regularly uses on sale, purchasing a few extra tubes makes sense. Toothpaste is effortless to store, typically carries a long expiration date, and does not consume much space. Just remember to compare the cost per ounce, not merely stare at the words whitening or sensitivity. Toothpaste does not hike its price by startling you. It hikes its price by appearing regularly in your bathroom every morning and every night. And that is precisely where tiny expenses quietly become a fixed component of the family bill. How long does one tube of toothpaste typically last in your home? 2. Pet food. There is something quite extraordinary about American families. They may cancel a streaming service to preserve a few dollars each month. They may swap from their usual coffee brand to a cheaper one or delay another year before purchasing a new phone. Yet, very few individuals are willing to save money by trimming the meals of the dog that has dozed beside them for a decade. That is why pet food has become one of the fastest swelling expenses, but also one of the hardest to trim. A popular 30-pound sack of dry pet food frequently used to range between $25 and $35. Today, many comparable products have surged to $40 to over $50, especially grain-free, senior, or high-protein recipes. For households with 2 or 3 pets, that gap rapidly morphs into hundreds of dollars annually. What is fascinating is that the price increase does not originate solely from meat. Pet food also leans on grains, vegetable oils, vitamins, minerals, multi-layer packaging, metal cans, energy, and freight. When the whole supply chain grows more expensive, the food bowl resting beneath the dining table quietly transforms too. I once stood in a supermarket and observed an older gentleman meticulously reading each sack of dog food. He set down the cheaper one, then lifted the familiar one again. In the end, he still selected the exact brand his old dog had eaten for years. Perhaps he did not wish to alter the one thing it still anticipated every morning. That moment made me grasp something. For many families, this is no longer just a grocery line. It is part of affection. If your pet is accustomed to a certain type of food and that product is on sale, purchasing one extra sack and storing it in a dry spot is a reasonable choice. Not because you're anxious about shortages, but because you know with certainty you will still require it a few weeks or months from now. Americans can cut back on many things, but very few people trim the 4-legged companion waiting behind the door every afternoon. And that is precisely what renders pet food one of the items worth preparing for ahead of time more than any figure on the receipt. 1. AA and AAA batteries. One summer evening, a sudden storm unexpectedly knocked out power across the entire neighborhood. The television shut off entirely. The remote no longer functioned. The flashlight in the drawer flickered for a few seconds and then died. The blood pressure monitor flashed low battery. The wall clock froze still. The young grandchild looked up and asked, "Grandpa, do we still have batteries?" That is when a small pack of batteries becomes the most critical item in the home. A pack of popular brand AA or AAA alkaline batteries typically hovers around $5 to $7. Today, many comparable packs are easily at $10 to $15, especially large packs or long-lasting battery lines. Prices climb not solely because of metals or energy, but also due to production costs, shipping, and demand during storm season, winter, or local power disruptions. Yet the most crucial thing is not the price. Batteries are one of the few items you hope will sit motionless in the drawer for a very long period. You do not hope the TV remote runs out of power. Do not hope the flashlight must spring to life. Do not hope the blood pressure monitor signals a low battery level. You only desire that when you need to open the drawer, they remain there. A pack of batteries can sit idle for many months, even many years, if stored in a dry and cool environment. That is also why so many households always purchase